Hi everyone, welcome to another art journal page tutorial. And for today, the technique that I wanted to try out on my art journal was contrast of colors and doing white embossing on art journal and how it kind of resists inks. So here are all the pages that I have created till now. Now for each and every page, I have created one tutorial and it is uploaded on my YouTube channel. I'll link it below for you all, the playlist of the same, in case you guys are interested. Now here some of the remnant of the previous colors you can see is already there on the page, and then I decide to add similar shades of chalk paint on top of my page. In this particular case, what I did was, since it is chalk paint and it is kind of a primer in itself, uh, I applied chalk paint first and then I have applied gesso. However, if you are using things like sprays, etc., which we'll be doing later on in one of our art page, then in those cases you need to first apply gesso, because you don't want things like liquid watercolors or sprays to seep into your paper. So ideally put gesso first and then put paints. In this particular case, since I was using chalk paints, which is kind of a primer in itself as well, it's fine. As with all my videos, the products that I use, the tools, etc., everything will be marked below in the video in case you are curious, along with the shade names of colors that I have used. So now that I'm happy of what colors of chalk paints have been applied, what I do is I start off prepping my page with some gesso. Now, as I told you earlier, you could have applied gesso first and then paint. It is completely fine with chalk paint. It depends on how you want to proceed. They can be applied interchangeably. So here I am using a combination of clear gesso and white gesso, because I did not want a page to be completely white. So I'm diluting that gesso with kind of clear gesso so that the page becomes translucent and whatever colors are there in the bottom, they will show through. Once everything is dry, I move on to the next part, which is stamping. Now also for this particular thing, what my challenge to myself was of not using any texture paste or ribbons or laces or those kind of things which I normally use to add textures. So now I was trying to challenge myself to add textures to a page, but using non-traditional methods, which we sometimes really forget. And here you will see that using our traditional methods which we ideally use, like stamping, stenciling with inks, etc., they also give such beautiful textures without adding the bulk of texture paste, but you still get a very pretty pattern. So initially I start off with one of the stamp, and I'm stamping that in black, but you can see it's only in certain areas. That is just to add some interest and to start building a pattern. On top of it, what I do is I have started adding some stenciling. Now here I'm using one of the mixed media stencil which I have also used in my previous pages. However, instead of using texture paste with it, which I normally do when it comes to mixed media and art journal, I am using distress inks. So you can see how beautiful the pattern is coming through. Even though we have not used any texture paste, no sprays, nothing. So even with basic things also you can get very good shabby chic or vintagey pattern depending on the colors you use, the stencils you use, etc. So it's not just that the ink is for card makers, it can also be used by mixed media artists as well. Again, the colors that I have used, etc., everything will be linked below for you all. So the colors that I used were first I started off with a shade of orange and green, which is similar to the chalk paint shades that I have applied in the background. And then I still felt that the page was a bit colorful for my liking. I wanted to create a more vintagey page, and that is why I go back with vintage photo. This is one of my favorite browns in the distress ink range, and I am applying that through my stencil, and then I'll also later on apply to the corner of my page just to add a bit more grunge here and there. Once I'm happy with stenciling, what I do is I just add some droplets of water just to add some texture, and that will remove the paint wherever there was water. Now here I still felt that there was something missing. So instead of using another stamp, what I decided was to doodle by my hand. and I'm using Pigma Micron pen over here, and I'm just doodling some simple lines, some stitching effect, some circles, etc. Nothing very fancy, very basic things, because I'm really not that great at doodling. Now here is another hack. Now I wanted a round stamp, but I did not own one. So what I did was I used the base of my chalk paint bottle as a stamp. So what I'm doing is I'm wetting the bottle slightly, and then I'm putting that bottle on top of my ink pad, so that the ink comes on the top wherever there was water, and the ink and water will react, and then I'm using it as a stamping tool on top of my journal. So think of all those different sized lids and these kind of bottle bases that you can use to create a round shaped stamp. You always don't need to buy a round shaped stamp. So that was another hack, just to use things that you have. This particular page, I really was very keen on using very basic stuff that people would have. And all these, honestly, these are all the things that I have from my card making days. Nothing of this is particularly mixed media products that I am using. So here I further added some splatters of vintage photo color. So I took some on my paper, on my lid, and I diluted it with water, and I used it just like paint to add some splatters. Now that I was happy with how the basic background was done, I move on to add the characters on top of my page. And here is the character that I selected. Now this is by Prima. These are some vintage photos by Prima. Again, you could have used your personal photos or anything that you could print, etc. I have books. I have a couple of vintage photos collection, as well as Tim Holt stickers, as well as paper dolls, which I normally use for my art journal. Now here, just to add more dimension and more interest, I used the same musical note stamp, and I stamped it in with vintage photo distressing, just to add some brown pattern here and there. Now distressing does not give you perfect stamping pattern, because it is a water reactive ink, it doesn't stamp really well. However, in art journal, that's the beauty, if even if it doesn't stamp perfectly, it's still fine. So that was what I was going for. And the next thing what I do is, I felt over here that some of the white was kind of lost in the whole process, and that is why I decided to do some white embossing on top of it, just to bring that white back on the top of my page. So again, I'm using the same stamp set, and I'm using some embossing ink on top of my paper, and then I am adding some superfine white powder, embossing powder, and I'm embossing my page. So this is how the right side of the page has turned out. Now you can see that just by adding that white, I get that contrast back on my paper, and it also adds to the whole vintage look of the paper. So this is another trick, like let's say while applying colors, you feel that the white or the background of your color is kind of lost. You can definitely add embossing on top of it with your favorite color, and it also gives you an additional texture. When you see it in person, it will give you another texture. So it doesn't always have to be a white texture paste and stencil. It can also be embossing with your favorite stamp. So here on the left side, again I'm repeating the same process, and you can see again, since we are doing white embossing, which is white in nature and it's opaque, it kind of stays on the top of your color, right? And it gives a good contrast as well. Now I really like how those circles came up using the bottle as a stamping tool that I did. So I'm just repeating the same process with again the vintage photo distressing, and I'll also use bundled sage distressing, which is that green that we are using. And I'll follow the same exact process, and you can see how pretty it gave me a pattern of that circles. So you could do this, and you could have also used a protractor or things like that, which you normally use in your geometry box. So you could have also used that. In this particular case, what this does is I can use different colors. Now once I was happy with this, what I felt was there was a lot of green going on in my page, and my peach color was kind of lost in the background. So just to bring that peach back onto my page, I did some ink blending on top of my embossed area with the peach color, which is dried marigold distress ink. And then on the corners, I am applying some vintage photo just to add more brown areas and just to, add more toned old paper look. And again, I'm doing some stamping just because I felt I needed some more pattern here and there. So over here you can see we have added a lot of layers, but nowhere where those layers bulk. Everything is flat. Stamping is flat, stenciling with inks is flat. We have applied colors, which is also flat layers. The only thing a little bit which adds a little bit of dimension would probably be your embossing, but at the end of the day that is also flat. So it is not always necessary that you need to add bulky items to create mixed media or to create that textured look. You can create such kind of multi-dimensional textured look with flat things as well. That was the whole idea of this particular page and the whole challenge that I had given myself. Now here, once I stick the photo, I was just trying out different stickers, and this is one of the latest released sticker by Tim Holtz that I'm using. It has a lot of brown and white colored sentiment backgrounds, so I'm using that on my paper. And that's it. I think those are the stickers that I'll be using. Again, all the products that I have used will be linked below. Now, just to emphasize that sticker further on the top of my page, I have kind of added a border around it with a pencil, so that now after adding that, you could see that, I from far away I can see that there is something on top of the paper which is written. It kind of whenever you have these kind of white stickers which are kind of lost in background, you could definitely use this trick to make it pop even further. Now my page or my mixed media project cannot be complete without some splatters, and that is exactly what I'm adding using some black gesso. I have added some black splatters, and I'll call this page done. I honestly love this idea of adding textures using flat lays like stencils and stamping, etc. I hope you give this technique a try. If you do, don't forget to tag me. I would love to see what you have made. And if you like my videos, don't forget to like, comment, and do consider subscribing to my channel. I'll see you in my next tutorial. Till then, guys, take care. Bye bye.